Hello and welcome back to another 5 show. I'm James J. Square, and today we are talking all things Skyward. This year I made a goal to myself to do more series, to complete more series that I have been intrigued by, series that I want to read, series I have no desire to read. I just have been wanting to read complete stories. That's what we're here to do. One, I just need to do more research into complete stories. As someone who writes series, you just need to know the ins and markings of outs of something that you're closely familiar with. It's never bad to know a story. It's never bad to know how a book ends. And so, yeah. So we're doing Skyward. Skyward is I'm trying to think, it's like a 9-book series if we're counting novellas. And in this video, we are counting novellas. I will be reading all the novellas, which we'll get to in a second. I want to preference this. I did read Skyward for this video, which is a 5 sci-fi vlog 2 years ago. I gave it 5 stars and says I want to read the next things immediately. I had other things to read, so I didn't get to it. We're making up for it now. I'm very, very excited for it. Just want to give you a heads up, I have a little bit of context for it. This isn't my initial reaction to Skyward. If you want my initial reaction, I recommend going over here. That being said, there are chapter times linked down below in case there's a favorite book of yours or favorite twists that you want me to talk about. These will be full reviews once I finish the novel, so it will not be up close and personal. Unless something crazy happens, I might pull you out. But it's very rare that they'll happen in these type of videos. These are direct reviews, spoiler reviews, I should say. So yes, there are links down below. Also, if you're not a novella person or you don't care about defending Elysium or something along those lines, I don't really say about that one, but if you don't care about those things, you can also skip those. Or if you know you like Skyward and you know you want other people's opinions and you don't need a non-spoiler review to explain to you what the books are about, if I would recommend them, you can also skip the non-spoiler review. Let's go ahead and jump to a Jacob in the future who's going to tell you a non-spoiler review after he's finished this entire series. Let's talk Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, the series. I have quite a few books to talk about, so we're doing a non-spoiler review, but I quickly want to run through the list of them all, just so you're aware when reading it. Technically, you start with Defending Elysium, which is the first review, which we'll jump into. Then you're going to read The Beautiful Skyward, and then you're going to be jumping into Starsight. This is the second book. Then I personally, this is controversial, recommend reading all of Skyward Flight, which are 3 novellas. They go as following: Sunreach, ReDawn, and Evershore. This is because most people recommend reading Evershore before you read the epilogue by Cytonic. But in my personal opinion, you don't need to do this. You can just read all 3 of these and I think you'll have a better experience. This in itself is like basically one full novel taking place in between the events of the middle 2 novels. And then you have Defiant, which ends the series, which wraps everything up and brings everything to clarity after the events of the end of Cytonic for the epilogue. Now, if you're only in for Spin's journey, right? If you're only here to hear about this girl, then the novellas probably don't matter to you. I'm not gonna lie to you. Because the effects that happen in those novellas are talked about slightly, but they're not like fully developed. But there's a lot of information on the floor if you do not read the novellas due to everlasting creatures and characters that become more fully developed. And so by the end, you're gonna have no connection to them. You're also gonna be kind of confusing on the world building in particular. Enough about that and enough of my little tangent. Let's talk Skyward and what the series is about. Follow Spin. She is in a world that she has been under. The place that she lives, which is Tartarus, has been under attack for decades, and they have fire pilots that go up to defend planet, and her dad was one of them. He was labeled a coward, and her whole entire family was labeled cowards as well. And she has made it her destiny to become a fire pilot and to not be a coward. And so that was what her goal is in Skyward. I highly recommend the series. I think it's super fun. I mean, there's a lot to take away from it. I think Brandon Sanderson does a great job. I think the romance is very beautiful throughout the entire thing. If you're a romance girly, just know it's very light, but it's very cute, very fun. I like the characters really well done. I feel like the plot was really well moved and really well handled. And I also do believe for every great series, you gotta hit it off the park with the first one, and you also gotta hit it off the park with the last one. And both these, for me, really did it. Another reason I recommend it, because like if you hit it off the park here, and then the middle books are like, they're okay, but they're not great. But then you come back and you land the fucking ending. Oh my god, it lands. So, I do recommend this series quite a bit. I think there's something for everybody, especially if you're into sci-fi. Oh my god, the stuff Brandon Sanderson does here, particularly with sci-fi elements and just in general, like there's just so many cool shit. There's so much cool shit. Alright, that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. Let's go back to intro, Jacob. Alright, that being said, from this point forward, you have been warned. There's nothing but spoilers. I'm going to talk about every little detail over the 4 novels and the 4 novellas. I guess 8. Is it 5 books? I don't know. Anyway, we'll get through it. That being said, the first book we're going to jump into is Defending Elysium, which is the prequel to Skyward. Defending Elysium, I have some thoughts and opinions on, but it is technically the first book in the Skyward series, and that is where I have started my reading journey with this series. Defending Elysium follows an operative as they land on a planet. It's the cat and mouse chase that they're looking for. There's some murder and conspiracy theories, but apparently this is the world that Skyward takes place in hundreds and hundreds of years prior. Space travel still is very much intact in things, and I'd say the most interesting things about this one, because I think I gave it like a 3.5, was the interesting world building going on. With the world building and the characters, I don't have much to say. I don't have much spoiler talk either, because we're in full spoilers. But with the characters and things, it comes down to none of them really grabbed me or moved me in a way that I needed to talk to you about. The writing is still quite good. There's nothing wrong with that. But some of the powers and stuff, mental powers, the fluidity of it all, I really liked and made me super duper intrigued. And I'm curious to see if any of those stuff you expel to the bigger books also, because I do know the ending spoiler for Skyward is going to set the rest of the series off. I have to wonder if they're connected. And so, like I said, I didn't write much to talk about for that one, but that's okay. It wasn't for me, but I can understand where maybe hopefully there's some like good build up and there's some alley for it. That being said, I will talk to you guys when I finish Skyward. I'm about 30% into it now, and I'm fucking adoring it. It's all you need to know. Alright, talk to you soon. Alright, hi. I want to quickly come in here and update you guys on Skyward. I am in the middle of filming a different video for you, so I'm all red and sweaty, so I am sorry. I am just as happy that I read it again. I was a little nervous to re-pick up this novel. I loved it so much the first time. It verged between a 4.5 and a 5-star almost the entire novel, which is very odd for me. Only a few novels have done that. Coming back to Skyward again after 2 years, once again, like I said, really anxious. I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I mean, this is the utmost truth that I can give. This is one of my favorite books. I'm so excited to take you to be on this path. Reading Defending Elysium, which do have minor elements to what I'm currently going through with Skyward. I think there's definite things that are going to be popping up in the future, and also this is, I think, building to the war that put the people here in Skyward. It made me a bit nervous because I enjoy Defending Elysium, but I didn't love it. And also, Skyward has 3 novellas, 4 books. That's a lot of content. That's a lot of story. And I was also really nervous about that as well. I remember this ending on a way that I wanted to read more, but I couldn't because it was like the 3rd book in a video, and I had to read the next one. And just like Gideon the Ninth, which is another series I plan on finishing this year, or getting as close to finishing as possible this year, sci-fi is one of those things where I do think you need to reread the first one. There's a lot of technicality here. So let's start with the book itself. What is Skyward about? What's the whole point of this? Skyward follows our main character as, I'm gonna call her Spin. It's not her name, but we're gonna call her Spin, because that's her call sign. Follows Spin. It starts out as a prologue with her dad going up and dying in a battle and being called a coward. That is soon debunked later on in the novel, knowing that he, in fact, came down and tried to kill a bunch of people on his own team, being and then them figuring out that there is this fact. Okay, she wants to become someone who flies for this company or this place that has essentially branded her as a coward, who will not give her any chances because of her dad being a fighter pilot. And once again, I think it does make a little more sense when you realize the whole story. Nonetheless, she still is trying her hardest. She is getting into flight school because it's an amazing professor who believes in her and who believed in her dad and who didn't understand the true effects of her dad, and who were more cumbersome to this idea of just the fact if it's real or not. And then you have the Admiral, who I think for the most part of this novel I end up not really liking at all, almost hating. But also, I think the reasoning is good. I think the reasoning to not like her is good. The cast of characters that are around her, one of the things that took me most by surprise the first time I read Skyward was the amount of deaths in the novel. It truly felt like it had high stakes. We start out with a group of 12. By the end, there's only 3 that survive, which is 4 that survive. 2 that end up quitting. So they have 5 in total in their Skyward group. the Defiant group. And I really do enjoy the best friend in the book as well. He is someone who leaves really, really early on in the novel to go become a mechanic and engineer to build things for this place and to take apart this ship, which we'll get to in a second. Don't worry, I will talk about the ship because I do love him too. I think every character made a lasting impression, especially this time around. And because I didn't really remember the beats of it all, and I'm happy that Jane Sanderson could have done a very typical YA thing and made it a love triangle as well. And I don't know if that's where these books end up going into. I don't think so. I think there's so much more story and so much more biggerness here that I don't think there is. But I do think there is a romance between her and the rich boy, Parker. Nope. Jerkface is what I'm gonna call him. Sorry, I'm just really remembering the call names, which we'll get to the battles and stuff here in a second as well. And I do like their relationship, and I do like the fact that he continues to believe in her, even if she doesn't believe in herself. And I think it's a really sweet romance, even because it's just starting as friends and things, but there is inklings for more, and I like this little build. I think it's perfect, and I think it fits for the story really, really well, and I think it really does. I think it's a good way to develop both characters at a simultaneous form. But she has a lot of heart and a lot of personality. So the romance is just an extra layer to her character instead of being a building block for her character, which I think is something really masterfully done. And I don't think many authors, especially in YA, could do this. And I don't know if that's because Brandon Sanderson is mostly writing adult, and so he knows how to craft the layers of those characters. I'm not saying a YA author could not do this. I'm just saying I've had bad luck with YA authors here recently in the past year or so, and so I have, there's only a few that I can think of that I think could wield this story. On top of that, the world building is very dense, but it's beautifully written, and I dense in a way that there's so much of it, but not dense in a way that I think it's hard to follow. So let me make sure that's very clear before you get scared about it. I'm spoiling a lot of things. You get scared about it. It's very dense, but in a very approachable way, in my opinion. Skyward is one of those books that everything makes sense. And I don't know if it's because I just truly believe Brandon's writing and truly believe that these mechanisms that he makes and these G-forces, they all make sense to me. I don't know if there is a lot of base in science in this, that he knew a lot about this, he did a lot of research into this. I don't know. I'm assuming he did based on being fucking Brandon Sanderson, but my point stays the same. Continuing onward, we have probably about 25% into the novel, she ends up finding a ship. This ship is a talkative ship. We don't really know too much about it. We don't know if it's from the enemy or not. The ship believes he is not. And for the majority of the book, the ship has no defenses. I say he because it talks. It has its own personality. She calls him Murderbot and things which I find funny because there's a series called Murderbot, which I read during that 5 sci-fi video. I do enjoy that one as well. Maybe one day I'll go back and finish it. I think it's done. I think Marvel has completed that series. I have no idea. Back to Skyward. Back to the point of this. And I just really love the quirkiness of the ship. I really love the aspects of it. I think it's done. I think it's done really well. I think Brandon hit off the park with that one, in my opinion. And I really enjoy, the whole point of this is that he's there for Renaissance. He's there to collect data of this world. He believes that his person died, but they said, please keep secret. He does have all these defenses. He has all these things. And I have to wonder if this is a ship from the original, the original novella. I don't know. I'm really curious to see where the ship comes from, and I'm assuming it will be talked about throughout the sequels and stuff, and we'll experience it and see it together, which I'm really excited about. The battle sequences are beautiful, and there's plenty of them. If that's them training, which I think that's also another thing I think really works well in this book, is that by the time they actually are up in the ships and they are fighting, and it's so visually beautiful, and you can understand exactly where everybody's going, you exactly understand what this looks like. Brandon Sanderson paints the most beautiful picture of it all. I think by the end of it, there's so many pages of training. There has to be 100, maybe 140 pages worth of training that's inside this novel. I think it works perfectly because the training, one, helps me understand the world and how the ship flies, and for me to really visualize it and be there with the characters. But on the flip side, I really got to know the characters because of how they fly the ship, how they do things. And because we are following a main character who is detached from them because the Admiral hates her, the Admiral doesn't want her there, and so she's putting a lot of boundaries on her. She can't go to lunch, she can't sleep there, she can't do all these things, and so she feels distant until a certain point in the novel when she's able to. Once again, like I said, her friend that's from before, who comes in, who ends up leaving, who ends up working on the ship, bringing it back to full health. I think it's also beautifully written. I think that friendship is really important, especially in stories like this, because normally when you have a friendship between a man and a woman, it does typically, normally, unless it's a gay, like either they're both queer or one of them is queer or something along those lines, you normally have a single person in that relationship who ends up falling for the other, and they both have very distinct people that they're after. I think they both really work well together too. I really am excited to see the pairings as they go on, and so that means that there's just a genuine friendship between them, like a brother-sister vibe, and I think it's also very beautiful. Her family dynamics as well is really interesting. I really like her grandma. Her mom has really good restraint and understanding, but I do think that there's a little bit of it that is very true, but also very annoying on one hand, done really well, so something to complain about, but it's something to take note of. The book ends, so let's get into like some direct spoilers. So like I said, a lot of people end up dying throughout, some of them most notable, some of them not. In my opinion, like I said, they all make their impression, but some last longer than others, and depending either if the character cares more or if I just really end up enjoying the personality, and then they're gone in an instant, which I think is a really good way to showcase war and showcase the battle of war and things. And I have to wonder if this is going to evolve past spaceship fighting or if it's just spaceship fighting. I don't. Real curious about that. But eventually, she, as in this, there's a huge thing going on, and the Krell, which are the bad people in this scenario, and I couldn't remember if we found out that they were actually not bad, but that's not what happens. We do find out that they're still trying to murder them, and that they're still trying to keep them here on this planet, and that was the whole point of their thing. Because eventually she does make it up past it and stuff. But they're trying to drop a bomb. They have these ships that can explode, that can destroy entire places, and they want to make sure that the general commands and stuff, or those are the ones that are going to die, not the people. And so that was like a big conversation and things as well. As the story progresses and the ending progresses, she has this she can hear them, she can understand their thoughts, which is the fact. And she's in a ship that can go really fast, that can go in stealth mode. She can teleport as well, which is really interesting. I'm curious to see how that plays out, but she can teleport. And so we're following, they end up surviving, everybody ends up surviving, and she chooses to go up. She chooses to reach for the stars like her father did. She ends up seeing this vision, she screams, and they go in stealth mode, and the vision stops, which is why she believes that she survives and why she can do these things and why she can move forward, and why her father believes that the people he came down were the bad guys, and which is why he never turned coward. He was just under mind control. And we learn about their defenses, we learn why they're there, and now the technology of the ship can be used in other ships, and so I'm just really excited to see how this world expands. Review Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. Starsight is the second book in the Skyward series. There's 4 of them, quadruplet or whatever. There's also several novellas. Once again, we are going to be covering the novellas as well. I'm in the middle of the first novella. However, let's talk about Starsight. Starsight follows our main character, and she's whisked off to a completely different world. Same world, it's just she's whisked off to Spencer. Okay, it takes place a little bit after the event. They're trying to figure out how she can teleport. That was like a big thing. And they're also finally trying to develop ships from Mbot as well, which is really fun. I'm trying to think. There's like other stuff going on as well before we end up leaving. Her and Jorgen do end up kissing in the very beginning of this book, which I wasn't really sure how I feel, and I'm still not 100% sure how I feel about it. She spends the majority of this novel not even here, so I'm just trying to go through the stuff before this book because I know more information now because of the novella. The novella takes place right after the events of the ending of this book, but it's still kind of covering some other stuff. Because we have Jorgen, who's learning the fact that he's also Cytonic, or Cytonic, which is what they call them. It's a family gene line that they've been in for a while now, and so he's learning his abilities, and so those are like the little interludes as Spencer goes off on this mission, I guess is the best way to call it. It's like a spy mission. Essentially, she's asked to someone named, oh gosh, I can't remember her name. Elysium is a purple alien. This is the picture. She's the cover for the next book, and essentially Elysium was going into the Starsight, which is the people that are trying to kill them, the Krell, they're trying to kill them. She was basically going to go join them as a spy. And so she asks, Spencer does the same thing because she's Cytonic, and she gives her the coordinates to go. She doesn't know how she gets the coordinates, but she knows that she has the coordinates and that she wants to go. And so her and Jorgen make a flash call decision stating, okay, we'll do this. It's fine, we're going to do this. And so that's what they end up doing. They do a flash decision of where they end up going, where she and Mbot and the slug, Doom Slug, end up traveling to this world. So then we leave them. The interludes are all through Jorgen's point of view, though. It's all in third person like it was in the first book as well. But they're all through Jorgen's point of view, talking about his powers, talking about how they're trying to work it, and also him learning and spending time with Spence's grandmother and trying to see the stars and realizing he can't see the stars, he can see down below. Him and a group of people going down and realizing and finding a cave full of these slugs, because I'm about to reveal why the slugs are so important here in a second. Spence's whole goal there is to go and get a hyperdrive so they can learn how hyperdrives work. Hopefully she gets one, she steals one, she can take one back, and then her best friend could either take it apart, or the mechanic, somebody could take it apart and work on it. So that's her whole entire goal. And a part of this is that she learns that Sunreach is meeting with these group of people to become fires for them. And so she has to do this training thing, and there's like a lot more, like she's back in school again, essentially, in a different way. We're figuring out new characters who do seem to be characters that we're going to be moving forward with for XYZ reasons and stuff. And she basically becomes the pilot, the lead pilot in this group. She also learns a lot about the big enemy, the big bad of this series. I can't remember. They're called either, it starts with a D, like a dipple something or those lines. Essentially, they're big, gigantic wormholes. They'll come and they look like they get into your mind, they manifest, and you can go inside and you can talk to them, and they have a heart and things. And her main goal is to try to manipulate this heart. And then she soon finds out that this company, which is bad, she always knew that they were bad, but there's good people on the Krell side. It's also a whole group of other creatures and stuff that she learns that space is not so small. She's also learning how to trust, and she's learning understatements of it, because in her book, she can't trust anybody. But she also learns that the main goal here is for them to manipulate these creatures and send them onto the planet so they can kill all the humans, and then the sky looks really good, and it's like all political cue and stuff. She's being a spy actively throughout the entire thing. There's this like Reed creature that's missed, which is really interesting. There's another creature who is like can be reborn like 5 or 6 times, and so the parents think they like found the perfect clone, which I also thought was interesting and intriguing. Essentially, the book ends with her being caught, essentially, is what happens before the big battle at the end. It ends up being revealed that she is a human, and oh my gosh, they have another Cytonic human who really hates humans. She grew up thinking humans were vile and horrible creatures, and that she should be ashamed of herself, and all these other things. And so she has the power, the Cytonics have the power to call these massive creatures and destroy these worlds. And so the people believe that they can control it, that if they give them enough noise, then they'll stay in the same place, and then they won't come after them. So essentially what the big battle is that they have decided to take upon the enemies, and she's going to call to the other girl is going to call to this creature, send this thing to them while they're mid-battle. Well, Sansa also understands this, and she ends up also in the process of learning this information. They end up shooting like this, once inside, the bomb that they have to kill it is actually just coordinates to the TARDIS, so once they meet one, they can be like, they can go in, they can talk to it, and then send them to where they need to go, hopefully using it as a weapon is essentially. I don't really know how to explain this. There's caverns, there's caves, they end up going inside this thing. It's hard to explain, but essentially it's like a big creature that can like kill worlds. When they're in there, Carol ends up shooting out the weapon, and she gets the coordinates to go back home. She can feel them inside her body. And so she ends up hijacking a plane, flying back home, is essentially what it is, leaving Mbot and the slug to themselves. She had to leave them, and Mbot's really sad, because Mbot's the whole point of Mbot's journey in this book is becoming real, becoming a human, trying to figure out if he has true humanity or if he does not. That's like literally his entire point of the novel. And so by the end, he feels extremely betrayed because of this. She ends up going to fight this war to save her people, essentially is why she left. She helps fight the war. She tries talking to the girl. The other people who she's been helping with the entire time, who learn she's a human, all agree to help her in the end as well. And essentially this girl is like, no, I don't know what you want from me. This is not happening. I don't care what you think. It's not happening. I'm going to send your people to die because they deserve to die because they're horrible humans. And she's like, you're a human. And she's like, I don't care. You're still horrible. And she's like, okay, whatever. So they try shooting her down. They try to kill her. She does end up summoning this creature. Spencer ends up sending this creature back onto Starlight is essentially what she ends up doing. which is a planet full of people that are not warriors. It's actually a very peaceful planet. There's a group of them that are very vengeful and very violent. The majority of them are very, very calm creatures, and so sending them to this place, basically a death sentence. Even if they were going to try to fight back, most people cannot fight back. And she feels really, really bad about this, and so they end up teleporting into this place, and she ends up saving the day again, as well at this other place, and becoming a allied hero apparently. The epilogue shows Jorgen finding all these slugs, because we learn that the slugs are the hyperdrives. You can manipulate them into their Cytonic in a certain way, and you can manipulate them to the best of their abilities and things like that as well. So that's like a big thing. And so he finds like a whole cavern of these slugs, and that's how his storyline ends, which is why that's important. Her storyline ends with she waking up, realizing, oh god, shit's happening, this is bad, they're lying, it's a coup, and then they're gonna try to kill her. And so she ends up placing a pin on the person she ends up trusting in the government. She ends up meeting someone in the government who trusts her and who understands her and wants to help and doesn't want this place to be a tyrant anymore, and wants the alliances all to come together and live in a peaceful society, essentially, is what she wants. And so she ends up giving this pin because she's cloaked. Did I mention that at all? I don't think I mentioned the cloakingness of this entire thing. Essentially, Mbot has this device that she can wear on her bracelet, which will change exactly what she looks like, and it fits her form and everything, and so you can never know that she's wearing something. It's like a I don't know, hologram device or whatever. His ship is also hologrammed and things, and the way they end up finding this out is based on a hologram as well. It's too complicated, so I'm just trying to do the bare minimum. She sends her off and says, I really need you to get back to my people. You need to tell them I'm alive. You need to tell them XYZ. You need to tell them that the Slugbots are the reason why they can teleport. There's also another reason why, she said they will help. You just have to talk to them. They will help. She ends up finding Mbot, who is, his entire ship is destroyed. And he ended up being able to replace his mind into a little cleaning bot. And so he's this little cleaning bot that can fly, but it's just a little cleaning bot. And she also has the slug, the death slug. And they end up walking into the unknown, which is what she calls the nowhere space, where these eyes are. So that's where they end. That's where the book ends. Now we're moving on to, I think it's called ReDawn or ReDawn or something. And I'm about halfway through that. So once I finish that, I'll come in here and I'll update you guys on it as well. All right. Hello, Skyward Vlog. I learned some stuff since the last time we talked, as I was looking into the wrong novella. That's a bit awkward on my part, but not yours. Let's go ahead and briefly talk about... So here's the thing. Novellas are interestingly complicated. I was thinking about maybe doing a mashup and talking about Sunreach and ReDawn together, because they're both coinciding at different, going back and forth. I also cannot think of a reason why you should skip these. They're called Stories from Fighters, from the Skyward Flight side or something along those lines. We have 3 stories. The first one takes place with FM. That being said, let's go ahead and talk about Sunreach. Sunreach follows FM. This is not a character that I'm particularly familiar with. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I read Skyward a bit ago at this point in time in life. Not really, but it was a minute ago. And so this character didn't really stick out to me in the list of characters. The voice didn't stick out to me, just everything about it just seemed pretty plain in my opinion. And so I didn't pay too much attention to this character, outside the fact that her best friend, the main character's best friend, is in love with this girl, which is something I did remember, but I thought he was in love with the country girl. He's not, he's in love with this girl. And so half this novella is 3 different storylines. We're closing up the storyline from the very end of the second book. We are also addressing the storyline with this new captive person. We're talking about the slugs, which I guess is closing up that storyline from the third book. And there's also a romance in here, and I'm wondering if in the contract for YA, there has to be a romance. Because both this one and ReDawn, I'm not really loving the romances that are presented to me. They're very quick, they're very fast, because the books are very short. So I'm not fully believing that these 2 characters would madly fall in love. I'm just having a problem with it. And you kind of have to be under the impression that they are going to. So let's talk about, once again, I'm in the middle. I'm 80% into ReDawn, so my brain's very much there. And FM is a very much big character here. We'll start from the beginning and I'll try to piece my way through this 180-page novella. Sunreach starts at the very end of the first book, so not with jargon, with the slugs, we'll get to slugs in a second, but being out into space and understanding what that means and where that's at and things, that being the big thing, because at this point in time, jargon's not back with the slugs, and that's a very big point. We are dealing with our captive, Aaliyah, I think is how you pronounce her name. I'll figure it out here in a second. He's still trapped down to a gurney and things, and they have decided after Jargon gets back, they obviously have succeeded with this battle, and the first part of the battle, one of the squad members does end up dying. Nobody that I cared about enough to remember, but someone did end up dying. They end up coming back because obviously the creature ends up going away, as we talked about with. And when they get back to the base, it's kind of like a fucking headache because you have people from like the colony government trying to breach itself onto the actual government. And they believe this is a great time to do this, like the military. And I think that in a world where you're essentially constantly going into war, I actually do think the military guard leader should be the leader of your government. Maybe not for the people's government, but the executive decision government. And that's where I stand on the matter. The other people in this world don't really know where to stand. And I think it's a very clear answer in my opinion. And so Jargon's mother is basically the lead of this person. Joya or something along those lines is her name. And she ends up popping up quite a few different times and ruining several situations that this book ends up going through, in my opinion. Like, it would have been so much more simpler XYZ if she just would have went along with the shit. She ends up waking up and they end up corresponding with one another through the pin FM and this girl, and she ends up really gaining her trust and understanding. And then Jargon's mom pops up and says, this bitch is going to be our captive, we're going to keep her hostage, we're going to find out all this information based on these hyperdrives, XYZ, trying to pound her for information. And this girl is like, bitch, I'm out. And then she poofs. No joke. She's gone. She's no longer to be seen. And so we're moving forward and upward with our time. In the next section of book, as we learn about a colony on Sunreach, where a group of people that were a part of the society that's trying to kill them, Starsight, is now there, essentially, is what the answer is, and that they have sent a distress beacon. They do not know how to receive said distress beacon, so they can't go to their ages yet, but that's basically the rest of the point of this story, is that we figure out the slugs are able to do a multitude of different things. In this book in particular, there are 2, 3. One slug is the Doom Slug, can explode and send things out that can hurt you, practiced by Jargon himself. The second one is teleportation, and then the third one is communication. Certain slugs can do the hyper jumps, and the other ones can communicate via the mind. You can join them into speaking across many layers, many different brains, is essentially how it's really explained. And you have to build certain contractions to keep them in, and things are those lines. The majority of the book, they are torturing these poor little creatures, and our main character is really against this. So also during all this, our main character and Sosa's best friend from the first book are becoming super duper close. He's really awkward, and it's like this really back and forth. I could say it was cute, but I honestly didn't think it was. I was a little bored with it. It's part of the reason why I got a 4, because I really didn't really like the romance. It's not saying that these characters didn't have chemistry, because they kind of do. I'm not saying that I don't think they would be cute together, because they kind of are. All I'm personally saying is that I just kind of wished more for whatever this was trying to do or trying to accomplish. In my opinion, it didn't work for me. There's just so much other shit going on that I was more curious about, so I think that also plays a factor. And it also felt very insta-lovey, not that they're like in love or anything, they're just boyfriend and girlfriend figuring out this relationship, but you have to really feel the connection to really make something out of it, and in my opinion, I didn't really feel that connection. That plays into the third act trauma of it all, So essentially, they work throughout all their kinks here, they learn that they can teleport, they learn how to teleport, and that's all fun and handy, and I think it's really important. I think it's extremely important information. I can't even imagine if you just jump into book 3, how that even is delivered to you. I'm really curious to see if I'm doing all this work. But here's the thing. But the thing here is ReDawn, for instance, which does take place right afterwards, which we'll talk about in the next clip. It's like starts and there's no explanation for any of it, like whatsoever. So I don't feel like I don't think Britta Sanderson is that person to hold your hand in situations like that. And I feel like she's explaining all this information because when Sensa comes back, she's going to be dumped into all of this and they're going to act like they already know it. And so it's our job to do the homework to know it as well, because it's not really going to ever get explained to her Or maybe she's just going to learn it and we're just going to assume she learned it or something. I don't know. We'll figure out what happened as the series progresses. One more book. This is the last little novella before I'm back in her head. I miss my little character, Spin. They end up getting the coordinates. It ends up being teleported into his mind. And they make a rash decision to go do this. It's against everybody's orders, particularly the people in the government. They don't want them doing something rash like this. They have to take several of their spaceships with them, and they're running out of resources. At this very moment in time, the only person who is Cytonic at this moment who could possibly do anything to help them in this situation is going with them, which is Jargon. They all pop in their ships, they all fly, they all float, they all get there. Okay? But in this process, in the time, Jargon ends up dying. Dead. Gonzo. Never seen again. It's a lie. But isn't it fun to be like, oh my god, really? But no. No. He was teleported by his slug into the building. Out of fear. Because the slug's like, oh my god, you're going to die. Don't worry. I got you. Poof. God. She does the same thing. FM does the same thing. Poof. Gone. Because they have realized by this point in time that they are bonded to these slugs. And that they are now best friends. And so now they'll take orders like normal. And so they go around, they capture everybody up in the ship, and then they end up going back and teleporting back into, base. There's a lot of other stuff going on. There's a tree that can eat people. I don't think any of that's important for me to fully discuss here and fully develop. Read the book if you're really curious. I'm doing Spark Notes. So they end up getting back. The story ends shortly after this, all with understanding that everything is working out just fine. They do have a strong feeling that this is the person they go rescue, is the person that Spencer says will help them in their attempt to take down this tyrant that was introduced in Starsight at this colony, because not all of them are bad. Yeah, that's where that book ends. And talk to you guys about ReDawn, as that is the next book in the series that I had finished. ReDawn is under the point of view of, oh my god, her name is escaping me, Akisha, something along those lines. She's the alien that shows up that since Spencer takes the place of in Starsight, and now we're following her. So in the previous novella, she ends up disappearing. When we join her in the beginning of this novella, she is at a game. She's watching a few firefighters fight in a very kind way, no aggression really whatsoever, and then they are attacked. Essentially, the people that they are with don't like them and they want them gone, and they're trying to join the sorority. So she ends up at a last minute risk of an effort jumping back to the terrace to find Jargon, to find all these people that helped her beforehand, and then try to convince them to run away. So after lots of conversations and stuff, a lot of people don't think it's a smart idea. Cobbs comes in and says, I'm not giving you an official order. I'm actually personally told you not to do this, but go ahead and do it, subtly type of thing. Whole group of team ends up jumping with all the starfighters into this planet. This planet is on, it's another type of tree. The tree itself is a normal tree. There's objectively nothing different about it, the previous tree. How the previous tree had vines and stuff growing out of it and that can move and eat you. This is not the same case. However, their fleet is quite immense, even if they don't really know what the fuck they're doing. There's also a romance between her and Troas. Troas is the name they call him that because he chose it to two snakes eating each other. It was the name that he chose. His call sign. Her call sign ends up becoming Angel, and I might call her Angel for the rest of this video, but that doesn't happen until later on. But they end up getting paired up, and they end up starting an Inkling. Nothing is fully cemented here, but there's other stuff going on, so it makes sense. We also learn, because they end up saving a group of their people and end up in a shelter type area. We learn more about the slugs. We learn that we can control certain aspects of the slug's powers, such as the one that ends up cutting Jargon in the last book, or in the last novella, can projectile those across the entire galaxy, or enter a cannon to certain areas and stuff, and they're called mind. So we're learning different aspects there of those lines as well, which I thought was really important. We're also learning that the government on Tartarus is still as dumb as I remembered, which is great. Jargon's mom basically wants to surrender all Cytonics over to the sorority, assuming that they're going to issue some type of peace treaty. They are not, which will become more evident here in a second. Because I don't think I have too much to talk about. There's a lot of stuff that was going on, but not too much. Basically, Some of the big plot points and the big points I do want to get across are the fact that they did take Spence's cloaking device and they are using it, and they have figured out a way to replicate it. Both Cobbs and her brother, Angel's brother, ends up having this happen and used in a very similar format twice. So the people who are using are not smart, but that's part of the reason why they figured it out. Cobb, it sounds very emotionless, very contrived and stuff, and when they had to jump back to get all the slugs and like all this other stuff, and also jump back to get Spence's best friend, FM's boyfriend, can't remember his name, Arzin or something of those lines, Cobb called him out and tried to shout at them, and I was like, oh, did Cobb, they convinced him? I don't think so. And it was this. That is revealed a little bit early on, when she's looking for her brother. Part of the reason what they're doing is going to go save her brother, and as they are in the process of doing this, it is revealed that he too has been switched out with a clone. They end up getting both the respective people back by the end. Her brother first, and her brother takes on a mission to bring ReDawn, which is the planet that they're on, to a revolt. Okay? Which he accomplishes, and Jargon does help, and Jargon also helps and accomplishes this goal. Both things are accomplishable, and it's all good. No problems there. Continuing onwards, that's all towards the end of the book when they do the revolt and things. We find out that the government has decided to go forward with this peace treaty. They hop on a ship, all the major people is also on the ship. Spence's grandmother's on the ship because there's only 3 Cytonics that are on board. Spence's grandma, Jargon, and Spencer herself are the 3 Cytonics that are pretty sure there. The grandma seems to be looking into the unknown, into an abyss, and not really understanding of where they're going, so I'm curious to see that. But it is soon revealed that there is a massive bomb, and they're planning on killing all these people and showing that they can take control over Tartarus. They all die. All of our main players don't die, but Jargon's parents die. Several other main, a head of Bubs die. Cobbs and Spence's grandmother go into the unknown, but they don't end up showing back up onto Tartarus, so I wonder where they ended up. And obviously, everybody that I was just talking about, they end up back. Jargon said after they saved their mom, they would go back and to really develop this peace treaty between ReDawn and them in an alliance again with the humans, and he said that it's going to be put on hold just for a little bit because he is going to go destroy this motherfucking place. It ends in a very oh my god type of way, a really oh my god type of way. I was not expecting it, and so I was really oh my god, I can't wait for the next one. And then I had to remember I had to read Cytonic. Hello, I want to quickly come in here and update you guys on the Skyward. I essentially have read 2 more things to talk about, so we're going to talk about them now. And the best of my ability, as I've also read 40% of the final book. Overallness of this story has really caught into me, and they are starting to blend a little, so I'm going to try my hardest to separate the 2 entities, starting with book number 3, Cytonic. Now, in my personal opinion, because a lot of people said that you need to read Jargon's book after this one, which is called Evershore, I actually recommend reading Evershore before this one, as I don't personally feel like it ruins the big reveal, because if you know it, who cares? If you don't, who cares? That's how I felt about it. I know some people have really big thoughts. It's a small little plot twist near the end of this. In my opinion, I recommend Jordan's book, but because most people told me to read it at the epilogue, I technically read it afterwards, so we'll talk about it next. That being said, let's talk about Cytonic. Cytonic starts with Spencer making the choice to go deeper into nowhere to understand what the Delvers truly are, leaving her people alone, hopefully getting them the answers that they needed about the slugs, and starting alliances to take down the sorority. Who knows if that happens or not? We obviously do, because I've read 2 novellas talking about and she left behind, and now she is stuck in the nowhere. At the beginning of this book, she learns and she meets Chet. Chet is someone who comes riding in on a dinosaur. He's also someone who says that he knows Mbot. Mbot's also with her on this journey, and so is Doomslug. However, when she jumped into nowhere, Doomslug disappeared. Mbot is still floating with her. He's just now a cleaning robot. So Chet has learned that she needs to take this journey called the Maker's Walk or something along those lines, and it's across the entire Nowhere galaxy. You jump between these little fragment crystals into different realities and things, and that she needs to do this to be able to reach the end goal, which is why the Delvers are the way they are. So she decides to go on this quest and to learn her past, learn her future, and learn what she is, Very Spencer-like. However, I don't feel like it's Spencer-like at all. I personally don't think Spencer would jump into the nowhere. I still feel very strongly about it. I liked where the book went, so I'm not going to complain anymore. I had a big issue with it. And it did take a lot of my enjoyment content out of this novel. However, because I felt like Brandon Sanderson needed us to go on a different plot point. Also, having 2 separate sequels that take place with a whole new cast of characters is a choice. I'm so happy that there's novellas, and I think this is a great way for me to learn as a writer to be able to split up the main storylines and also still give the readers what they want in separate things. Might be a novella trick, because damn, I would have been pissed. I had a friend who stopped reading this book once she realized she was not going back to Tataris because she missed all those characters, and I told her, hey, there's cute little novellas I recommend. And she's like, oh, maybe I'll finish the series now, because she had no idea novellas existed. Which is fair. I didn't know either. I only know this because I do like a lot of research into these series beforehand, so I can read them in its entirety, because that's how I read a series. So they end up meeting. Chet ends up coming in on a dinosaur, saving her from some pirates. Well, they realize that they're needing some type of ship, and they find a place, a pirate holdover, where they can get a ship, fly out, and whole 9 yards. She ends up not trusting Chep because a part of these things, a part of the nowhere, is that your mind starts to disappear. So you need ashes or an icon item, which can hold your memories very strong. Also, if you're in a big group, it seems like that also tends to help a lot more if you're not in a big group. And she ends up not trusting Chet because he's looking at her icon like it's fucking candy and he wants it deeply. She is chosen to betray him, and she ends up getting caught in the process of this, which she ends up spinning, saying, oh, I can infiltrate the pirates and I can become their friends and I can just steal one and it'll work out even better this way. But it's obviously offended by this and things. She's also learning much more about her abilities and her powers. She can talk, she can communicate by brain really easily. She can also, that's a little bit later on, she's learning some other things that she can possibly do with her mind as well. This is what I thought Shadow Wing series was going to be when it came to X-Men powers. She ends up being caught and she's stuck inside this place. All the group characters are great and she ends up really enjoying her experience there, but she ends up firing, taking out one of the people and stealing a ship with Mbot after being in there for like 2 weeks. They end up rescuing, going on a mission, and the further you go up into the sky, the less likely of a chance are you to remember, and she realizes that they cannot survive that high up in the sky because that was her way of getting around the pirates. So then going back down, making a deal, basically essentially she will fight the other Pirate King's champion so they can win the galaxy and then she can go home, is essentially what the deal was. Everybody agrees on it, and so that's what they end up doing. Hesha is the one that she ends up fighting. We thought Hesha died at the end of Starsight, but no, he actually was sent over into the nowhere. They find him, he was all left alone for a long time, and so he doesn't remember anything about himself, but they end up fighting whole 9 yards. The main person in this ends up taking control of a lot of power over there because of this win, and she is free to continue on her pathway. However, before she can start her pathway, they have to fight the sorority, and also Hesh is also a part of that sorority at the moment because he doesn't realize, and we learn that the Delvers can send huge cities attacking people and ways and things. She's also seeing Jorgen, and we're learning some information that we've already learned in the previous 2 novellas, and she's also seeing Jade or Brave, as we're learning that they can communicate back and forth with one another. They're not just exactly sure why it's so hyper connected. It is connected. Those are also all going on at the same time. Back to the battle, it was pretty cool seeing them throw buildings at her and things through the nowhere portals, so I really enjoyed it. We also know for a fact that the Delvers do not want her to continue down on this pathway. She has no desire, she has a lot of desire to do it. They're basically saying, we want to attack your people, we'll go against the party if you stay here. Do not continue on this journey, and we have no problems with you. No problems whatsoever. Well, she learns that they're lying and that she will continue on this journey, and she decides to leave really late at night, and so there's going to be another Delver's attack as they've been happening more frequently as they realize where she's at and they're trying to kill the people she's with. Also, because we're towards the end of this book now, at the very end we realize that Chet is the Delver she talked to that she changed. He turned into a human form body to become really close to her so she can take her on this journey, this pathway. He's really scared about it because this is a fear. Basically where they're going is to figure out what the Delvers fear the most. Her and Mbot end up going on this journey, and we end up hearing about AI, we end up hearing about the original creator and things that are those lines. And then also, we end up learning that their greatest fear is death, it's their coming, it's human reality, it's feeling the loss, the pain, and very typical. She gets out of it, all the Delvers come after her, and Bot ends up making a great sacrifice. Chet also ends up becoming a great sacrifice so she could escape to another reality. Her to somewhere again. With also Doomslug, who turned into her icon. So Doomslug is now back, camouflage, 29 yards. They end up escaping into the nowhere without Chet, or escaping into somewhere without Chet and Mbot. Soon realize that Chet and her combined into a single force being, so now she is part Delver, and we also learn, that's the next book. At the end of this book, we think Mbot is dead, but we think he's dead, okay? I'm going to ignore the epilogue here. We'll talk about it more when we talk about Defiant, just because I don't want that to be spoiled for you. We're going to talk about Evershore. Evershore is the Jorgen novella. It picks up right after the events of the last one, Sunreach. His parents are dead. He is trying to handle everything. He decides to go directly into the work of it all. They end up getting a beck and call saying that Cobbs and Granny, because they did go back to TARDIS, are at this planet called Evershore with the Kenshi. Kenshi are what Hesh are. They're like this big. They're very cute. They're like little hamsters running around. He says, cool, no problem. I'll meet you over there. It's a good time. He ends up back-mouthing all the higher-ups in TARDIS and says, dude, I have to go do this. We gotta get Kaz back. We gotta get our people back. We gotta make more alliances. We have to fight Sporty. This has to happen. We have to make this stuff happen. It's mandatory type of thing. I have to leave. There's no other choice I have. And so they're like, sure, whatever, go. Take a few flight members, 9 yards. You're like, cool. They do realize that it is Alamik doesn't think that it is Cobbs and Granny because she can't see feel any Cytonics on the planet, but we soon do realize that it is Cobbs and Granny. Their bodies are there, but their minds seem to not be, which will become a focal point in the story, which is why I mention it. Also in this book, we learn that Jorgen's power is that he can shoot mind flares out of his mind. Pretty cool we use in battle, as they also realize Sporty is tracking them, and they track him back to this planet, end up making a huge connection with these little creatures, and they end up joining forces together in the middle of this as well. By the end, the Sporty is coming and they're fighting, and a lot of these people are going to end up dying, and so they believe that they can move some of the platforms on the TARDIS here so they can have more defense to protect the city, and they end up actually moving the entire planet. So that's interesting. The TARDIS is a moving planet. You can jump it. Other things. It's also very important to note that all the henchies, like Cytonic people, disappeared one night in a library, and they believe inside a wall. Okay? Well, that wall has been blocked. We were told by Spencer not to go towards that wall. Well, Jorgen goes towards that wall. He hears Granny, and they're needing backup for this big fight, and so he tries to unlock it. He does unlock the wall. Everybody comes out of the wall back into their bodies, or actually comes out of the wall. So Granny's back, Cobbs is back, and all the henchies like Cytonics are back as well, all because they were trapped on the nowhere side in this like portal type of situation. There's only a few of them apparently, we learned, but that's not important for this book. So Cobbs is back. Cobbs also says after the battle is won and Sporty go backwards, and they're not going to bother them and stuff. Well, they realize they thought. Cobbs being back, he's in a really, really rough shape because of his mind being outside of his body, even though his body was still being held up. He decides to Jorgen be Admiral for the going forward periods, and then he will directly be Admiral when coming back. And that means he's out of Skyward flight and things. And then he also, Jorgen promotes FM to a politician, essentially controlling all the politics as they go around to all these different colonies, trying to recruit as many people against Sorority as possible, and that's her job. And that's where it ends. The Cytonic's epilogue takes place directly after those events. We learn that the two planets have, that now are orbiting a planet, and that Jorgen is Admiral Cobb now, essentially, and, all that fun stuff. I'll do you guys when I read Defiant. Like I said, I'm about 40% into that, and it won't take as long, but then the series is over. I am feeling like Defiant's a vibe, by the way, so yay for me. I'm gonna quickly come in here and close out this Skyward reading vlog. We officially have finished the series. Isn't that crazy? It's very crazy to me. That being said, I did finish Defiant by Brandon Sanderson. At the end of this, we do acknowledge that there is a new series coming out called Skyward Legacy, written by the person who helped co-write the novellas that go along with this series, which I feel by the end are almost completely necessary, because they don't tell you anything. They briefly tell you a little bit about what the slugs are, and for the majority of the time they do not. I found that to be really interesting. This book also, I recommend getting the physical copy just for a little bit of it, because there are images and stuff throughout. From what I understand, these images were shown at a con that he does, as well, so you could have seen them early. I don't know if they came out early, but also this is the first book to jump around through multiple POVs. We're not just following Spencer, especially towards the end of the battle, which I think was a beautiful choice created by Brandon Sanderson to showcase the entire evolution of the battle, the fluidity of it all, because I think if we were just trapped under Spencer as we're going to jump into the story plot points, it would be really hard. And that's where this book gets complicated, in my opinion. I am leaning on a 5. I do think it's a perfect conclusion to this series, and it makes me kind of sad that there's more coming. I don't really know if I needed more. I'm not mad, but I'm nervous to see what the author is. How much was the novellas her and how much was the novellas Brandon? And that's the important part here. I don't want it to feel off. Also, I'm curious to see who's going to be the lead. The book does end in a way that I feel like you could continue on with this world. There's more places to explore, but I just don't know. What is Defiant about? Well, Defiant is Spencer comes back home. She realizes that the world's very different and she's still figuring out her powers. So essentially, she is now both a Delver and a human. Her and Chet at the end of the last book have combined into one. Barriers don't mind her. She can throw objects. She can throw planes out of the sky. She's basically a full fucking superhero, okay? That's what she is, but she can't control these powers because it's not just her in her body, it's also Chet. Also, it's revealed very early on that Mbot is alive, that his sacrifice, he just went off and became a Delver, essentially, is what happened to him. Let's talk a little bit about Mbot's plot point throughout this story. So Mbot here is used to figure out why the Delvers are, or how to use this pain against them. Because the whole reason why Delvers exist, and the reason why they want to stay in the nowhere, is because of this pain, this irresistible pain that they can't handle a loss. Which I think is really nice to go back to Spencer, who can also not handle a loss. So it's a nice little tie-in to both characters. This is pretty well handled and given up through Chet until he becomes a Delver again inside Spencer's body, and that's when the powers become erratic. We are also building up to a big, huge war. They have the sorority is already saying that we're going to kill everybody because that's what the Delvers want. They want all Cytonics dead, and they only want to transfer between slugs. That is what the Delvers want, and that is what Braid and also the lieutenant above her wants to do. So they already know they're going to be attacking to TARDIS. They're going to be killing everybody, the whole 9 yards. Say hi to the camera. Hi. So they know they're going to be going into this all-out war. This has already been pretty well established. They start to advise a plan. Spencer ends up going into battle. They realize that she can do a lot of cool things with her new powers. They end up winning a small little battle against sorority this way because Spencer annihilated like 14 ships in one go. Also, it's really take to note here that Spencer herself has changed. She is no longer the battle warrior that she was, and she believes that she can end confrontation either through talking or that bloodshed is not necessary. It's not necessary for everything involved. That's very important to note, as I do think it shapes the way she handles several situations going forward, the good and the bad. This is really established here as because after this battle, because Ned ends up getting hurt, his arm ends up getting chopped off. It is chosen here for her to become a weapon and only act as such. One of her main choices, she ends up meeting with Jorgen for a dinner date, and he ends up talking about how they really need to figure out what to do about all these slugs, but also they need to stop opening up the portals, going between the nowhere and the somewhere. There's these portals that are mentioned in the previous book and novellas and stuff. And she says, okay, what if I cut off the resources from the somewhere for the sorority, and that way the portals are useless, like we can close them from the inside. And he says, that's too risky, I don't trust your bandits, they're gonna betray us. And she says, whatever. And so she goes and does it herself. She grabs a group of team, and that is the most Skyward-like book section of this book that we get out inside the very, very end. I would say the last like 2 or 3 chapters. Other than that, that's the most Skyward we get. She ends up talking to someone from book 3, the leader of the pirates she ends up being with, and they end up shutting down all those things. However, it does move up the timetable ridiculously amount. Braid also says, I want to fight you in a duel. Spencer being Spencer is like, I want to fucking fight you in a duel. Now, Jorgen does talk her out of it, and Jorgen says, you already went behind my back, did something, almost ruined the alliance, because that's what her consequences were for her actions of doing this behind his back. You already did all these things, can you please just trust me? And he's like, can you please trust me? And he's like, no, because you're thinking I'm saying no to go do this duel. She also proposes a plan and an action to move forward where they attack first because they all know where they're all headed. It's also another thing that they realize on this planet that they are going to secure these doors and stuff is that all the slugs are in one central planet, Eversong. So they all know where they're headed, and so she's like, what if we just attack them first? Well, in the process of this, she also starts building a ship for Mbot, so he has a place to come back to if they can figure out how to put him back there when this is all done and said. And then she ends up getting kidnapped by Braid. I find that section to be the most confusing and the most hard to understand because I don't think it's mapped out good enough, and I think it's just more like a plot device to get her into the custody, because she spends the next majority of the book, I would say the rest of the book really, in this section of trying to escape and trying to understand, and they have this Cytonic power where they can cut off all communications, and they basically make her obsolete. Spencer being tortured and things, not like tortured, but tortured enough. She ends up escaping, her and Braid end up talking, and she realizes that Braid, her main goal here is to figure out how Spencer can control everything, how Spencer combined with a Delver, and then she ends up killing the lieutenant. Well, she has Spencer do it out of mercy, but she ends up shooting him in the head and stuff after he betrays her. The entire sorority knew this, so she's been behind it the whole time, and she wants to be like a great conqueror, like we're talking Alexander the Great, that type of stuff. That's what Braid's main goal is. Her parents were murdered, and so we also know that it's a bit of a revenge policy as well. But that's really what it comes down to. And also we learn that they can terminate all these slugs immediately. By a push of a button, they die. Which is fucking crazy to me, and that should never have been a thing. And we do find one that dies, and it's a really sad scene, and it's not fun. It's not fun. So those are things that we do learn. Not that they become, they kind of become a plot device, but they get written off pretty quickly, so that it's not like a full-blown plot device. So by the end of it, Jorgen ends up moving the entire planet, again, to Eversong to fight a defense with the Defiant. Gran is the leader of the Defiant, and Spencer is going through a bit of a chaotic measure because the last dose of the drug that they gave her sent her out into the spiritual realm. So she's no longer attached to her body, so she cannot help. They also showed Jorgen the video of her murdering the lieutenant, which was not what she was expecting her to use it for, but she was expecting it to be used, to be fair. Spencer was, because it was recorded. Moving forward, Spencer, it is revealed that, was, like I said, Braid's the mastermind. Spencer ends up getting back her control as she realizes that Braid has to have an antidote because she's overlooking her shoulder, she doesn't trust anybody, and she realizes she keeps touching her pouch in her front. Spencer ends up grabbing that pouch in an altercation and ends up curing herself. Mbot, on this mission to figure out how to attack the Delvers, realizes they all have one mission statement. They all objectively agree with one mission statement. And so he convinces all the Delvers to not trust Braid. That plan goes into force, and then she ends up getting her, her powers back and stuff. They fight and stuff, and they all realize that she's much stronger than when she thought she was. Braid can't win this war. Then we also have the opposite side, the actual battleground. A lot of stuff don't matter. I'm not going to really talk too much about it. However, I will talk about Gran and Gran's sacrifice with the Defiant. By the end, it seems pretty ridiculous, but it happened, so we're going to talk about it. Gran ends up dying in the Defiant. They have a rule order saying that AI and stuff brings the Delvers closer, that no one can leave the ship unhandled. They can't just leave it to the Delvers, which I think is really stupid. However, she figures out that all the communication slugs and everything else is on the opposite side of the planet, and they're all coming for her because that's what Braid knows to do, just to attack the big thing. And so she said, go behind the planet, take over the slugs. When we need them, we can use them, and then I would sacrifice myself for this quest. And that's what she ends up doing. She ends up dying. They do end up taking over all the slugs, and then when Spencer goes into another realm to talk to the Delvers, and Mbot shows her the key, which is either to stuck them in a time loop or to show them all what she showed Chet. She chooses to show everybody she chose to show everything to Chet instead of keeping them in a time loop. And boom, baba boom, we have the ending of the book. The Delvers end up turning back into human, and she ends up following Braid after Mbot turns into his own ship, which is pretty cool. And she ends up following Braid out, and the whole Skyward flight, which is beautiful. It's such a great moment. Ends up taking down Braid. Then we go into the epilogue where we see that the slugs are now in command of everything, and the sorority is under strict control because, sure, they weren't necessarily the ones attacking the humans, but they were using and abusing the slugs like no fucking tomorrow. It is something to worth note. Then, lastly, we have the stuff about Spencer. Spencer ends up realizing, because she is a warrior at heart, the beautifulness of their life, being able to just do whatever they want to do without the threat of war, is beautiful. beautiful, but it's not really for her. So she gathers a team up and she ends up taking off to explore the galaxy and then to come back home to Jorgen, because her and Jorgen are obviously together. And yes, guys, that is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, a 5-star series. I loved it. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was great. I hope you guys enjoyed this type of video. Let me know if you guys did. These are the videos going forward. This is a very big new series I'm doing where I'm reading huge series. So if you want to list more down below, I have the next one picked out. I have no idea about going forward in the future for the other ones. But if that is something of interest to you, let me know in the comments down below. Or if you have any series, let me know in the comments down below and I will surely read them if I've not read them already. And I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching and goodbye.